Okay. Yeah, so that sorry. So that mix ratio is super important. Um, so rule of thumb, a medium uh ratio when you're talking about like the I guess the texture of the bead. Um, I'm gonna be showing you the difference. I'm gonna be showing you the difference when I switch to the like, you know, the other view of the camera. Um, but for now, just keep that in mind. Also, jot down these notes as I'm speaking about it, just so that you have it in front of you. Um, when we're doing like the practice portion, um, because I think that'll help, you know, for you to be able to visually see the steps and some of the like the key points while you're actually doing it. Because it's really hard to kind of like memorize all of this stuff um, off the top of your head. So the second thing to pay attention to is the temperature. Whenever it's cold, the acrylic tends to dry a little slower, meaning it'll be runnier for a longer period of time. When it's warm, when like the room or when the acrylic temperature is warm, it tends to dry a little faster. Um, and that it matters because um, that gives you a perspective on how much time you actually have to achieve the look that you're looking for. So um, so yeah, if you have like if you're in a colder room or if your acrylic or your liquid is cold, you know you have a little bit more time to manipulate the acrylic and get the look you want. And if it's a little warmer, sometimes it dries so quickly that it's like, all right, forget about it. Or you literally have to turn on the AC in order to like actually get the acrylic to, you know, adjust to, you know, what you want it to do. Um, the third thing is I put size, but I meant like the size of the acrylic bead that you're using. So for instance, if you're doing a smaller nail, like a pinky, obviously you want the beads to be smaller because a bigger bead is going to be harder to harder to maneuver it. It's going to be harder to actually lay it down and have it look smooth. And then another thing with that is you're just wasting the product, you know, so kind of just want to avoid using a wrong size. Also, if you use a small bead on a larger nail on the flip side, you're going to be taking double the time to actually create that nail. Um, and time is so important when you're doing these sets because there's so many steps to doing nails that if you take too much time on any one step, it could really push your, you know, your appointment back. And then just you'll just be sitting there for a way longer time than you really have to. Um, okay, so shape. Shape is really important as well. Not really more so towards the tip of the nail, but more or less towards the cuticle. I'm going to show you what I mean by that as well when when I get to that part. But it's important because your cuticle is shaped round. Well, it's in a round shape. um, the only finger that you might have that might be a little less round is your thumb because it flattens out a little bit towards the cuticle and then it's, you know, round towards the edges. Um, but typically everyone's cuticle is round. So you want the bead to be round. Um, it's just going to flow into the cuticle a lot easier. And it's just going to make the look it's just going to make it look a lot better. But like I said, I'm just going to show you, I can show you better than I can explain it right now. So we'll get to that. The last thing is your pressure. Um, so whenever you place your bead down, your pressure should always be very light. The reasoning for that is um, the acrylic is still soft. You know, if you're putting too much pressure on it while the acrylic is still soft, it's just going to be moving all over the place. And it's also in your probably also going to wipe all of the acrylic off as well. without you even noticing or without you even realizing it. So you want to have really light pressure in the beginning, and then as it starts to firm up, you'll have to apply the pressure gradually, because you won't be able to push around acrylic that's slightly firm if your pressure is too light. You won't be really moving it at all. And with that also just comes with what area of the brush you use to manipulate it with the type of pressure that you're putting, but I'll also explain that later too. So some key points: always clean your brush. So whenever you are using your brush to lay your acrylic, if you have product on the brush, it's going to mess you up, because that acrylic is going to stick to whatever you're trying to use on the actual nail. So it's always best to make sure you're cleaning that brush in between every single few strokes that you actually apply to the acrylic. So yeah, that's pretty much that. Oh yeah, I already said the pay attention to your pressure. I added that twice because it's really important. Because with a lot of newbies, because when I do my one-on-ones, I do notice that, the student will apply the acrylic, and because they're kind of nervous and they're trying to do it the right way, they're just going right in and trying to manipulate the acrylic, but all they're doing is wiping it off right off the nail, and then just wasting the product in essence. So I put that one twice. Always look at the nail from all directions and angles. Okay, so to make sure that the acrylic has the proper structure, you have to look at the nail in all directions. You want to make sure that one part of the nail isn't too thick, whereas on the other side, it's not as thick. You want to make sure it looks very even on either side of the nail. And I thought someone was saying something. Yeah, you want to make sure that it's even on either side of the nail, meaning like it's symmetrical on the right and left hand side. And then when you look at it from the side view, you want to make sure you're able to see the transition from your cuticle to your apex to the tip of the nail. The next thing is always use quick strokes when smoothing out a bead. Yeah, so whenever you use really like slow strokes or
attention passengers. Please follow all safety guidelines when riding any set of vehicle. Also, as a courtesy to others, there is no eating, drinking, or smoking on any.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, whenever you're doing like slower strokes on the bead and when you're trying to like smooth it out, it actually doesn't get you the look that you actually want, because it won't be as smooth as it would be if you use a quicker stroke. With that, you also want the brush to be clean, and you want it to also be slightly damp with the monomer liquid. And that just ensures that you get a really smooth application and that you won't have to do too much shaping and filing. Okay, next slide. So this is just a process of how I usually apply the beads. I'm gonna go through this as quickly as I can, but just try to jot it down as quickly as you can as well. So I usually just apply my beads from the tip of the nail up to the cuticle. Depending on what size nail I'm doing, I might use less or more beads. Like for instance, for a short nail, 9 times out of 10, I'll do one bead, but that's a little more difficult. That's something that, you know, down the line you might be able to do, but like starting off doing a one bead is kind of hard. So even for a short nail for you guys, I would say just doing 2 beads, one at the tip and then one at the cuticle. Same thing for a medium nail, one at the tip, one at the cuticle. Very rarely I might have to add a third bead to the medium nail and that's only if the apex isn't as pronounced as I would like it to be. Then I might add a little bit there, but that's pretty much on a rare occasion. And then for a long nail, I usually do 3 beads, well, 2 to 3 beads, I would say, depending on how long it is. One at the tip, one at the cuticle, and then one at the apex. After I apply the bead, before I even release the brush, I pretty much smooth out the bottom of the bead. And this is so that you're giving the bead a pathway to go to actually come down the nail on. Like without doing that, what you'll notice is that the bead will start to kind of spread sideways to either side of the nail. And then you're gonna find yourself trying to chase it on either side of the nail. It's gonna get really messy. The acrylic is gonna get underneath the tip if you're, if you're using tips. So yeah, try to avoid, not smoothing that bead out before you even release the brush off of the nail. After you do that, I clean my brush. I should have put clean brush a lot more in between these steps, but I didn't want it to be too repetitive. But always remember to clean your brush. It doesn't matter how many times you wipe it off. The more you wipe it off, the better, but make sure you have a clean brush because that's just gonna help you have a nice clean application. Smooth out the top and the sides, and then you're gonna guide the bead down the nail using the sides of the bead. Now, usually if the bead isn't too firm, you'll be able to do it this way. If the bead is too firm or if it's too dry, you're kind of gonna have to manipulate the bead a little bit more than this in order to get it all the way to the very end of the nail. But rule of thumb, you'll be able to like just kind of guide it using gravity and then just wiping down the sides. When the bead firms, that's when you're gonna make sure the structure is right. So pretty much this is pretty much when the acrylic isn't too liquid. It's more malleable, similar to like a putty or like a Play-Doh. When it gets to that like thickness, that's when you want to really use the belly of your brush to kind of make sure the structure is right, meaning the tip of the nail is thinner, and then it gradually gets thicker as you get towards the middle of the nail. All right, so for the second bead, this is usually the one that I apply at the cuticle. I want to make sure that it is nice and round. Like I was saying before, you want to apply it close to the cuticle, but not directly on the cuticle. The reason I say this is because whenever you apply a bead of acrylic, you'll notice that it starts to spread out, right? It doesn't just stay in that one spot. And so you kind of want to use that to your advantage when you're applying the acrylic. So if you apply it right at the cuticle, it's going to bleed into the cuticle, and that's what you want to avoid, because now trying to clean that up is just an extra headache that you really don't want. So you always want to apply it close to the cuticle, but not directly at the cuticle. You want to smooth the bottom of the bead before releasing the brush. This is going to be every time you when you apply a new bead of acrylic. You're pretty much, like I said, just giving the bead a pathway of where you want it to go. So and because, you know, like I said, we're using gravity, we want it to flow downwards, we always smooth the bead down before we release the brush. Now after this, I was supposed to clean the brush because you want to make sure that it's free of anything, of any acrylic. After this, you want to smooth out the sides of the bead. And then what you'll notice is that it'll start spreading right into the cuticle. If you place it properly, it'll start flowing right into the cuticle, and the nail will pretty much be done at that point. But you just want to do a little bit of manipulation to that bead to make sure that it dries in the shape that you want. So if you have kind of like all right, I won't say it that way. So if you've applied the bead to the cuticle, but it was a little too far away because you kind of didn't anticipate it to, you know, flow to where it did, you can use this as an opportunity to push the bead a little bit closer. But this is while the bead is still nice and soft. But also still keeping in mind that you don't want it exactly on the cuticle, you just want it pretty close to it. After this, you want to pat down the bead. And I'm going to be showing you exactly what I mean by all of this stuff. Pat down the bead around the cuticle so that it gives it like a natural transition. I don't know if you guys ever noticed some nail techs, when they do their nails around the cuticle, it just looks like they have a hump there, right? Like, I don't know if it's just me, but I hate that look and it doesn't look natural to me. So for me, I always make sure that I pat around that area so I don't have a huge hump there. Now if you do apply the acrylic and there's a hump and you couldn't have avoided it because maybe the room was too warm and you didn't get a chance to do it before it hardened up on you, you can always file that away. But but the way that I'm teaching you guys to apply the acrylic is in a way where you don't even have to do all that. Like, the filing would be so minimal that you're just like flying through it. So yeah, that's why I added that step. And then after that, you're just going to continue blending it with the first bead. And of course, that's going to be towards the bottom of the bead. Let's see. All right. So this is going to be just a diagram to show you how the nail looks from the side view. I wanted to show you guys exactly where you want to place your apex, right? So I don't know if you can see my, oh, sorry. I don't know if you guys can see my my mouse, where my mouse is. But in the first, so I pretty much divided the nail into fourths. The first fourth of the nail, which is towards the tip, that's where you want the thinnest part of the nail to be. And then as you graduate and then you get to that third fourth of the nail, that's where you want the apex to be. So always keep that in mind. It doesn't matter how long the nail is. That third fourth of the nail is always where you want the apex to be. And then towards the cuticle is where you want the second thinnest area. Well, I wouldn't say second thinnest, but you also want the cuticle to be thin, as thin as you can get it. Because like I said, that's just going to give it more of a natural look. hold on 1 second. I have a text message. Let me see. Sorry about that. Mhm. All right. Sorry about that. I was texting one of the students. But yeah, so this is pretty much just what you want to keep in mind as far as where the apex goes. So additional beads. Additional beads are usually, typically for me, used in the apex area. If I, like I said before, if I feel like it's not protruding enough, if it's not the highest part of the nail, which is what the apex is supposed to be, I'll put the addition bead on there just to make sure it looks how I need it to look from the side view. So you always want to apply it in a circular shape, smooth out the edges, and then wait for it to firm up before you smooth it out and flatten it out and things of that nature. The reason being is pretty much the same thing I was saying before. If you start to flatten and smooth it out before it starts to firm up, then you're just going to be wiping that bead right off the nail and just wasting the product. So that's pretty much for that. I'm going to switch over to the view of my table and then show you exactly how I do this. So. All right. So for me right now, my room is it's a little more on the warmer end. So I'm gonna keep that in mind when I'm applying, because if my acrylic starts to firm up a little quicker than I would expect, then it just means that I have to work a little faster, which is fine. I don't know why it keeps going out of focus. All right, so I'm just gonna start with the smaller nail. I'll show you the 2 bead method. So I'm picking up a bead around this.
Do you have your camera on?
You can't see.
Yeah, I can't see you in
Oh, you can't see it?
No, we just see the PowerPoint.
Yeah.
Oh. Oh, I think I know why. Sorry. You guys can see it now?
Yes.
Yeah. Actually, before I even get to that point, I'm gonna show you the ratio, the proper ratio. So if the bead is too wet, it means that you haven't taken enough of the liquid off. So if it's like dripping like that, that's when you know there's too much liquid on there. And then you have to pretty much pat it on the side. You don't want to take too much off because then the bead will be too dry. So just keep that in mind. So if it's a wetter bead, it's pretty much just gonna, hold on. All right, that wasn't a good, let me show you. Yeah, if it's a wetter bead, it's gonna be like this where it has no form, it has no shape. It's just kind of moving where it wants to, right? If it's a dry bead, it's gonna look like this, where there's a little bit too much texture there. And you can even see like towards the brush, there was still a lot of dried product there. So you wanna avoid having that texture bead as well. So for the textured bead that you would prefer, you want it to be round, shiny, and you don't want it to move on the brush. So I would say, see about this. This is a little too dry. All right, so this is a good bead because it's not moving too much, but it's nice and round and shiny. So this is how you want it to look. That's the proper ratio. So keeping that in mind when you're applying. These are pretty small fingers, so I use small beads. Sometimes I even drain some of the liquid out before I apply it. Like I said, put it halfway to the middle of the nail. Actually was supposed to, I'm gonna redo that one. Place it at the halfway point and smooth it down before I even release. Now it's giving my bead a pathway to go down, right? I made sure the top is already smooth, so now I'm just smoothing down the sides and allowing my bead to kind of just flow down the nail, right? At this point, I'm really just smoothing out the sides and making sure that there's no acrylic that's going over the nail. All right, now when I get to a certain point, I'll just remove any excess. This is usually a really quick swipe right here. Okay. Move that. And now the acrylic has hardened up enough where it's at that Play-Doh stage, right? Looking at the side view, it looks pretty good. It's pretty flat all the way throughout, and it's thin all the way throughout. So that's pretty decent, I would say, for the first bead. Notice that I didn't even touch the middle of that bead while it was coming down that nail. I really was just guiding it down with the sides of the bead, right? And then at the tip, you know, I kind of just want to do one of those so that it's like a nice sharp shape. Now for the second bead, this is the one that you apply at the cuticle. So I apply it in a circular shape, flatten it downwards. See, this one flowed too. I applied that one too close. So you see how it pretty much flowed right into that cuticle because I applied it way too close. All right, so now I'm applying it close, but not too close. Flow it downwards, clean the brush, flatten out the sides. Now it's not close enough, so now I'm just pushing it upwards a little bit. And then cleaning the sides a little bit more. And then I just continue smoothing it out with what's already there. So one of the steps that I actually forgot to add to this one is to look at it at the side view again to see exactly what you have. So now, and also I didn't even have to pat it to flatten it out at the cuticle because I saw that it was already starting to give that kind of look. So yeah, when it comes to the steps, you know, you won't have to use every single step every single time. And then other times you might have to add a couple steps depending on what you have. But rule of thumb, you know, that's what I usually do in order to achieve this type of look. So yeah, you look at the side view again. And then for me, I noticed that the nail is just very flat, right? It has absolutely no true apex here. It might not matter too much with a nail like this because it's so short, but I still like to add some type of apex because not only because of the structure, but also because of like the overall look of the nail. So what I'm gonna do now is put that addition bead at the apex. It's gonna be in a circular shape. And I'm gonna place it exactly where I want that apex to be. Flatten it, smooth out all the sides. I'm not touching the middle of the bead yet. Flattening out the top. Okay. I'm just smoothing out the sides and all the edges, top, bottom, and the sides. Now, the bead is starting to firm up a little bit. This is what it looks like from the side, right? It's starting to firm up a little bit. So now I'm able to actually manipulate the middle of the bead. What I'm gonna do first is clean my brush off, make sure it's a little damp, and then I'm gonna pat it so it levels out, right? And then I'm doing quick strokes, like I was saying before, very quick strokes. And also because of the fact that it's a little bit more firm, I'm using the belly of the brush instead of the tip of the brush so that I can get a little bit more pressure on the bead. And so it flattens out exactly how I want it to. All right. So now looking from the side, you can see the apex a little better. And it's coming out of the cuticle nice and naturally. Let's see. That's pretty much done. Now, like I said, not only do you want to look at the sides and look at it from like just look at it dead on to make sure that the shape is still there, but you also want to look at it from the tip of the nail because you want to make sure that it's nice and even all the way throughout the nail, right? And when you can see that, you know that, you know, you sculpted a pretty decent nail and you can move on to the next. So now I'm going to be doing like a medium length nail. Same steps as before. Always make sure that the nail is facing the floor so that when the acrylic flows, it flows right off the tip of the nail instead of flowing down the sides of the nail. Now at this point, I just remove the excess off the tip and make sure that the sides are still nice and flat. Nothing is coming off the sides of the tip on either side. Right. And it's nice and firm now, so I'm gonna, yeah, so it's nice and firm. So now I'm gonna look at the side view. From the side view, I can see that the tip is actually thicker than the middle. So what I wanna do is actually use the belly of my brush because I'm using more pressure now. I'm using the belly of my brush to kind of push it back upwards. All right, using a little bit more pressure. Keep those sides intact while you push that acrylic further up the nail because we don't want a thick tip at the nail. All right, so I'm looking at the front now. All right, it doesn't look too thick anymore. So I'm gonna move on to the next bead. All right, this is what we have so far. This one is gonna be at the cuticle again. Placing it close, but not too close. Cleaning off the brush. Pushing it up a little further. Cleaning up the sides. I'm actually pushing this one back up because it started to flow down because it was just way too liquid. So whenever that happens, you can easily just push it back upwards. At a certain point, you're really just manipulating the sides and making sure that that bead is, it's coming into a smooth transition with what's already there. All right, so those are your two main focuses when the acrylic starts to firm up a little bit, the sides and making sure that it's smooth with what's already there, right? So now after we get to this point, look at that side view again, same thing for this nail. There's not enough apex. So now I'm gonna add that. Smoothing out the edges, sides, the bottom, the top. I'll look at the side view. This is what it looks like now. I want it to flatten out a little bit here, so I might actually move this up a little bit. Flatten it out. Use quick strokes with a clean brush, slightly dampened with the liquid. Quick strokes. All right. I'm actually gonna add a small, another small one because I have like an empty area right in between where those two beads were. So I'm gonna add a really small one, about this small. And I'm gonna just pat that in and use a quick stroke. So this is how it looks now. Okay. I'm gonna move on to the longer now. All right. Because this is a longer nail, I'm gonna be using a larger bead for this one. Still placing it in the middle of the nail and swiping it downwards. Notice that I applied the bead sideways like this, right? I'm gonna show you why. Because the nail is coming down long ways, it's always easiest to apply the bead in this fashion instead of applying it like this, where that bead might actually slide off either side of the nail, right? So always keep that in mind. The size of your brush and how it'll look when you actually apply it. Now, some of your brushes might not look like this. I flatten mine out like this to help me when I'm cleaning out the sides, right? So I can get like a nice crispy, you know, cleaned edge. That's not even the edge, but you know, where the nail and the sides of your actual finger meet. You want there to be pretty much no acrylic in that area. So I pretty much use my brush to do that. And that's why I flatten my brush out like this. So that's why I'm actually applying it long ways, I would say. All right, so still in the middle of the nail, smooth it down before I even pick it up. All right, clean the brush off. The top is already flat, so now I'm pretty much just guiding the acrylic down the nail and letting it do exactly what it wants to do. It's just leveling out. I'm not touching the middle of the bead. I'm letting it just apply itself. It's nice and smooth without me even having to manipulate it that much. A lot of times, less is more. After you get to the tip, you get all of that extra acrylic off, right? And then you look at the side view, looks pretty good. I'm just gonna flatten out the tip a little bit more. Right. And that's pretty much that with the first bead. Now the second one is gonna be at the cuticle again. I'm gonna show you guys how I do this on my actual fingers as well, because sometimes on the practice fingers, you really can't see exactly where the cuticle is. So I apply it in a round shape, smooth it down, clean the brush off, and now I'm just pushing in the sides and pushing it a little closer to the cuticle. I'm just cleaning out the sides and smoothing it into what keeps harassing me right now. There we go. I'm also pushing this up because the same thing happened to me again. This is just letting me know that I should take a couple seconds before I actually apply it onto the nail, because the acrylic has just been a little bit too liquid. Now I thought because that my room was, you know, a little bit on the warmer side, it was gonna my acrylic was going to be drying a little quicker, but that's not really the case. Probably because I opened the window right before the class. Okay. Now looking at the side view, it looks like this. It has the same thickness all the way throughout the nail. So now I'm gonna add that third bead as well. In the round shape. Place it exactly where I want the apex to be. Smooth out the sides, smooth out the bottom. Do not touch the middle of the bead. Okay. Now this is what it looks like now. Now I'm just flattening it out and smoothing. So looking at that side view. Okay. All right. So now it's pretty thin at the cuticle. You have the apex, which is the highest part of the nail, and then it gets thin towards the tip. You look at the front view of the nail, you see that it's not too thick all the way throughout. Some acrylic actually got underneath right here, but I'll get that after. And yeah, and that's pretty much how I do a longer nail. The the concept between all three, it's pretty much the same. You just want to kind of gauge how much acrylic to use, and just how your acrylic is applying itself in general, right? So now I'm going to show you how it looks on my actual nails. Excuse how they look. They're going to get soaked off right after this. So just kind of ignore all of this. I just want to show you what I mean as far as like applying that cuticle bead close to the cuticle, but not too close. All right, I'm waiting a couple seconds so that it doesn't flow into my nail too quickly. All right, flatten it down. Yeah, no, that wasn't a good one. I waited too long with that. Whenever you're applying your acrylic, if the bead isn't working, just take it off and start over. It's always best to do that than to try to manipulate a bead that's not going to work for you. The nail's just going to look a mess. So just start over. I'm gonna apply this one again. So at this point, it wasn't close enough. So now I'm kind of pushing it a little further in certain areas. So that after I apply it, this is what it looks like from the side, right? And see, it hasn't flooded it, right? It's exactly where I want it to be. I'm gonna show that again. Hopefully I can. Let me try to zoom in a little bit. Okay. I'm trying to focus it a little bit. All right, this is probably the best it's gonna give me. Smaller bead, because it's a smaller nail. Sorry, close but not too close. Smoothing out the sides. Now for this one, I'm not going to actually hit the cuticle at all because it was close enough. Right, so without me even touching the cuticle again, it pretty much met up with my cuticle without flooding it. It's kind of hard for me to show. The camera won't, it won't focus up. This is what it looks from the side. Right. All right. I'm sure on this one. Close, but not too close. I can't even show how it's spreading. Clean up the sides. Right. This is the side view. So yeah, this is definitely going to be something that you're going to have to practice more than anything. And I can't really get like a nice high quality depiction of it. What I'm probably gonna do is videotape it myself, just on my camera, and then send it to you guys so you guys can see exactly what I mean. But yeah, that's pretty much it with that. So now we're just gonna go off into the practice portion. I don't know if anyone has like their like the materials that I had put in the email and sent you guys earlier in the week. I know I sent it a little late, so that's my fault. But if anybody wants to like practice and so that I can give them some critiques, or if you guys just have questions or things like that, like I'll be more than glad to do that. So yeah, I'm gonna start like as far as questions. Does anyone have any questions for me so far?
I have a question. So, like when I was practicing before, I realized like it kind of started like crystallizing.
Mhm.
Like, does that mean like it's like my room is too cold, or like am I like manipulating the acrylic too slow?
So you're saying it was pretty much getting too hard too quickly?
So it looks. Hold on, let me just show you.
Okay, let me go back to the Zoom. Let's see.
So like, I don't know if you can see.
Hold
Well, it
on.
like it looks frosty, I guess.
Let me see.
I'm trying to like,
Oh, you mean after you applied it? I know
yeah,
what you-
yeah.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
having the same problem.
that actually only depends on the actual acrylic. I noticed
Oh,
that.
okay.
Yeah, I noticed that that actually only happens when I use like certain clear acrylics. It'll start to
Okay.
get that like, is that what you used on top?
Yeah, it was like yeah, it was clear on
Yeah.
top of it. And then it got because it wasn't like that at first.
Yeah, yeah, it's usually with clear acrylic that I get that. And it's really annoying. But what I typically try to do is make sure that I finish whatever I need on that nail before I cap it with that acrylic, with that clear acrylic, because after that crystallization actually happens and you try to like say add something else on top of it, it's gonna show through after you put your top coat on and stuff like that.
Okay.
So yeah, so just make sure you like if you're doing like designs in the acrylic, whatever the case may be, that you get all of that done before it starts to crystallize on you. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Does anyone else have any questions?
It's not really a question for like, is there any tips that you give for beginners who's like don't have no experience or like just really starting? Because I was watching you, but like certain things were just kind of like hard.
Yeah. Um, so tips, I would definitely say, hmm. So would you say tips with the actual application or just like in general?
Both is good, but mostly the application, like putting the acrylic and stuff.
And but you were here from the beginning, right? Um,
Yeah.
Probably some of the tips is really just what I have put in the PowerPoint as far as like hold on, let me go back to it. Um, yeah, a lot of the stuff is just some of the like when I put the key points under like when applying acrylic, some of those will probably be the best tips that I can give you. Um, because like I said, it's something that you're just gonna have to practice over and over and over again. Like there's no easy way out. Um, you're just gonna have to keep practicing. Get a practice hand if you need. Get multiple of the like the little fingers that I was using, if you need it. But just keep practicing as much as you can until you start to kind of understand how the product works. Um, Let me see. What else could I add? Mm,
But like starting off, is it better to have like a smaller size? Like, what size brush do you think like we should start off with?
So I usually start my students with like a size 12 to a 14.
Okay.
Um, you don't want anything smaller than that because you're pretty much just going to be like applying acrylic forever. Like it's just gonna take too long. It actually got easier for me as I increased the size of my brush. Like right now, I'm using like a size 18.
Okay.
And for me, it's just easier because especially when I'm doing like long nails, like I would never want to be applying acrylic with a small brush on a long nail. Like it's gonna be way more than 3 beads, first of all. And then it's just for me, like it's just gonna look a lot smoother with the bigger brush because
Okay.
you can pat down more of the acrylic, more surface of the acrylic with a bigger brush. And just the nail is gonna look smoother in general. So I would say increase the size gradually, but do it as quickly as you can, I would say. Just so that you can get that nice application, like a nice smooth application.
Thank you.
No problem. Does anyone else or want to show me how they apply theirs so that I can like give some pointers? It's up to you guys, like, either that or I can show you how I apply like ombre acrylic if you guys don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
Okay. I got a paper towel. All right. So for ombre acrylic, you typically need 2 contrasting colors, and then yeah, you typically need 2 contrasting colors, and then a color. I mean, in either like a clear or like a cloudy, like natural color to cast. I'm gonna be showing you like the classic pink and white, because that's like the most common. Um, so first thing that you want to make sure is that the well on your tip is nice and flat. The reason being is that when you apply your white, you want it to be as thin as possible, or whatever your first color is. You want to apply it as thin as possible, and so if that well is still there, it's kind of going to interfere with the look. That's first thing. Secondly, when you're applying the first color, you want to make sure that the top of the bead is like an upside down shape. You don't want it to stretch all the way across both sides of the nail. The reason for that is that when you start filing the size of the nail, like when you're doing the shaping process, you're gonna see that it's gonna be the first color and then a very sharp line. Not even a sharp line, but there's not gonna be any graduation from the first color to the second. It's gonna be the first color and then the second color. There won't be any kind of like, you know, there you won't see that ombre there, if that makes sense. So I'm just gonna show you what I mean by that. Starting off with the white. Starting off with the white. All right, I'm gonna smooth out the bottom. All right, so as you can see, the top of the bead is in that kind of like U shape that I was saying. It doesn't come all the way across to the other side of the nail, right? So now when I file that nail, you'll be able to see the ombre all the way throughout from side to side. Also, I applied it very thin, very thin. There's barely any acrylic there. And that's because you're doing 3 different layers of acrylic. You don't want it to be too thick to start off, because you can always add white, but you can't take it off after you've already applied it and it's already hardened. So you don't want to end up with a bulky nail at the very end. So always thin at first. So then you want to go in with your pink colors. So this first bead, I'm actually going to place right above the white area. Sorry, let me move up a little bit. I'm gonna place it right above the white. And I'm gonna smooth it out with what's already there pretty much. I'm not worried about the ombre too much on this first one. I really just want to have a little transition before I start with my cuticle bead, right? So I just add that and I smooth it downward. Right? Don't be shy to actually smooth it onto the white. Because before it hardens up, you can always clean some of that off. Now I'm cleaning off my brush a little bit and I'm taking off any extra pink that I got at the very tip of the nail, because this is where I want the white to really pop out right here, right? So I don't know if you guys can see that difference, but just getting off any pink that was already, well, that got on that area. And then the second bead is going to be the cuticle bead. It's so hard trying to film this and like do it at the same time. Place it at the cuticle, smooth it downward. Now it's hardened up a little bit, but still malleable enough for me to like pull it downwards with quick strokes. Okay. All right, so now at that point, the ombre is mostly there, but I'm using this last step to pretty much perfect the ombre. So any little area that I feel like there isn't enough pink, now I'm starting to add it there. Now for my liking, I feel like this area here is missing a little bit of pink. And I think in general, the transition could be a little better. So I'm just gonna add a very small bead in that part. Just to get the transition that I want. Right. I'm really focusing most of that on this right-hand side. Right. So now looking at it, it looks a little bit more uniform, right? Even on this side, I feel like I'm missing just a little bit. The thing about ombre is the more detailed you are with it, the better it looks. So kind of just use your judgment, and really, really pay attention to like where there isn't enough pink compared to white. And just how the transition looks in general. Like I want this to be the pinkest area and this to be the whitest, and everything in between it is just a graduation from one color to the next, right? And say I feel like the tip isn't white enough or something like that, right? I can always just add a little bit more at the very, very tip of the nail, right? And just work it upwards in very short but quick strokes, right? Just to make it a little bit more white if you want. That's optional though, right? And then when you get to the kind of look that you want, you cap it with, for pink and whites, I usually use like a clear, but it's like a natural clear color. And that actually helps the ombre to pop out a little bit better. Well, I would say the transition of it will be a little bit better. So even if you have any imperfections, this will kind of like blur it out. It'll kind of give you that blur effect, so you won't see it as much. So now I'm just capping it to protect the design underneath. So when I'm filing and shaping, that ombre is still there. Still paying attention to the structure of the nail. Okay. A little bit right here. Okay. And there you have it. A nice smooth ombre. Right. So that's pretty much it for that. Do you guys want me to show you that one more time, or just move on?
I'm kind of just having like trouble, I guess with the cuticle area, but I guess that's just like just trying to practice more.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, that's probably going to be the most difficult. But like I said, I'm going to just take like a separate video of it and send it to you guys, so you guys can see it more like up close, exactly what I'm talking about. Because that's definitely going to be like one of the harder things for you to like get down. But that's pretty much all I have for the class. Unless anybody has any more questions, I'm probably gonna just end the class and then send you guys the recording so you guys can like go over it as many times as you want. And then also send you that video when I get the chance. So any more questions? No questions? All right. So the last thing that I wanted to also to give you guys at the end of the class was just an offer as far as like for my one-on-one classes and for the online classes as well. So I'm only offering this to, you know, the people who actually signed up for this class. 50% any of my online or one-on-one classes if you guys sign up by tonight. Honestly, my prices are probably the cheapest that you guys will find in general. So half off of that, like you're pretty much just getting a steal. And it's going to be showing you like the application again, but also everything else that doing nails encompasses, like the designs, the polishing, you know, tip placement, shaping, all of that other good stuff. So that'll be for any class. Any day after today, if you want to sign up until next Friday at 8 p.m., I'm offering 20% off. And that's for the one-on-one classes. So yeah, if you're interested, DM me or send me a text. And I'll be able to like, set you up with that as soon as possible. But yeah, that was pretty much it for tonight. Thank you for joining. I appreciate all of you. This won't be the last free class. I'll have, other ones as time goes on, just so you guys can, kind of still see what you'll be learning and get more just more advice and more tips and tricks on how to get the look that you want. But yeah, also, if you guys want to send me some videos of you applying acrylic, kind of personally, I'm fine with that as well. Because I know, showcasing it in front of others while you're still in the beginning phases, sometimes that can be a little daunting. So definitely reach out to me if you need any help or anything like that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for tonight. Yeah, so good night, everyone, and I'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.
No problem.